Yo fam, let's talk about World War I, the OG global drama that went from 0 to 100 real quick. This was the first time the world saw such a massive conflict, involving so many countries and causing so much chaos. Picture this: Europe in the early 1900s, everyone's flexing, tensions are high, and then BAM! The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand was the spark that ignited the powder keg. World War I explodes like a TikTok trend gone wrong. Nations were dragged into the fray, alliances were tested, and the battlefield became a living nightmare. For 4 long years, countries were throwing shade, forming alliances, and battling it out in muddy trenches. The Western Front, the Eastern Front, and beyond saw relentless fighting. It was a messy, chaotic, and ultimately tragic affair that left millions dead and the world forever changed. The scale of destruction was unprecedented, and the human cost was staggering. We're about to unpack this historical drama, breaking down the main players, the beef, and the aftermath. From the trenches to the treaties, we'll cover it all. So buckle up, grab your snacks, and get ready for some serious history tea. This is World War I like you've never seen it before. One of the main reasons World War I escalated so quickly was because of all the secret alliances. Imagine a group chat where everyone's promising to have each other's backs no matter what. That's basically what happened, except instead of subtweeting, they were mobilizing armies. You had the Triple Alliance, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. Spoiler alert. Italy switched sides like that friend who always bails on plans. On the other side, you had the Triple Entente: France, Russia, and Great Britain. These alliances were like a game of telephone. One miscommunication and boom, everyone's dragged into the drama. Before the war, Europe was basically one giant arms race. Everyone was obsessed with building bigger, badder militaries. Think of it like everyone trying to one-up each other's Instagram followers, but instead of likes, they were collecting battleships and artillery. Germany was particularly thirsty for power, rapidly expanding its navy and army. This, of course, made other countries nervous, and they started beefing up their own forces in response. You know the saying, if you want peace, prepare for war? Yeah, well, this time it totally backfired. Imagine someone trying to steal your lunch money. You'd be heated, right? Well, that's kind of what imperialism was like. European powers were obsessed with conquering and exploiting other countries for their resources and markets. This led to a lot of resentment and tension, especially in the Balkans, where different ethnic groups were vying for independence. Nationalism, on the other hand, was like that friend who's always hyping up their own country, even when it's not warranted. This intense pride and loyalty to one's nation led to a lot of competition and mistrust between different countries. Basically, it was the ultimate recipe for disaster. The trigger shots fired in Sarajevo. So all this tension was simmering, and then came the spark that lit the fuse, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne. On June 28, 1914, Ferdinand and his wife were visiting Sarajevo, Bosnia, which Austria-Hungary had recently annexed, much to Serbia's dismay. Enter Gavrilo Princip, a Serbian nationalist who was like, not today, old sport. He shot and killed the Archduke and his wife, setting off a chain reaction that would plunge the world into war. Talk about a plot twist. Key players, the squad goals gone wrong. Now, let's meet the main players in this global drama. The stage was set for a conflict that would engulf the entire world, and the key players were ready to take their positions. Germany, led by Kaiser Wilhelm II, was the stereotypical friend who always wants to be the center of attention. Wilhelm's ambitions and aggressive policies were a driving force behind the escalating tensions. They were hungry for power, had a massive chip on their shoulder, and weren't afraid to throw their weight around. The German military machine was well-oiled and ready for action, showcasing their might in grand parades and military exercises. Austria-Hungary, after Franz Ferdinand's assassination, was like the heartbroken friend looking for someone to blame. The assassination was the spark that ignited the powder keg, and Austria-Hungary was quick to point fingers. They issued Serbia an ultimatum that was basically impossible to meet, knowing it would lead to war. The demands were harsh and uncompromising, designed to provoke a conflict. Serbia was the smaller friend who got caught in the crossfire. Despite their best efforts to navigate the situation, they were inevitably drawn into the conflict. While they tried to appease Austria-Hungary, they also had Russia's back, which made things even more complicated. Serbia's alliance with Russia meant that any aggression towards them would trigger a larger response. Russia was Serbia's ride or die, ready to throw down at a moment's notice. The Russian Empire, with its vast resources and military might, was prepared to support Serbia against any threat. When Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, Russia mobilized its army, dragging France and Great Britain into the conflict. The intricate web of alliances meant that a local dispute quickly escalated into a full-scale war. France had a long-standing beef with Germany, dating back to the Franco-Prussian War. The wounds from their previous conflicts were still fresh, and France was eager to settle old scores. They were ready to clap back and defend their ally Russia. The French military was mobilized, and the nation was prepared to stand by its commitments. Great Britain initially was like, "Can't we all just get along?" They hoped to avoid the conflict and maintain peace, but the situation was rapidly spiraling out of control. But when Germany invaded Belgium, neutral territory, they were like, "Okay, that's it, I'm calling my manager," and joined the war. The violation of Belgian neutrality was the final straw, prompting Britain to enter the fray and defend the balance of power in Europe. Battle royale, trench warfare, and gas attacks. World War I introduced a whole new level of warfare, trench warfare. Imagine living in a muddy, rat-infested ditch for months on end, constantly under enemy fire. It was brutal, unsanitary, and psychologically draining. Battles often resulted in stalemates, with thousands of soldiers dying for minimal gains. And if bullets and artillery weren't bad enough, they also had poison gas. This terrifying new weapon caused blindness, suffocation, and excruciating burns. It was a grim reminder of the horrors of war and the lengths to which countries would go to win. Tech check, new weapons, same war. World War I was a technological turning point, with new weapons and innovations changing the face of warfare. We're talking machine guns, tanks, airplanes, submarines, the whole shebang. These new toys were supposed to make war quicker and more decisive, but in reality, they just made it deadlier. The conflict dragged on for years, with millions of casualties on both sides. Treaty of Versailles, and the award for most savage treaty goes to. After 4 long years, World War I finally came to an end in 1918. The world breathed a collective sigh of relief as the guns fell silent, and celebrations erupted across nations. People danced in the streets, hopeful that the horrors of war were behind them. But the drama didn't stop there. The war had left Europe in ruins, with cities and landscapes scarred by years of relentless conflict. The task of rebuilding seemed insurmountable, and the political landscape was more volatile than ever. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, was basically the ultimate mic drop, or should we say, treaty drop. It was intended to ensure peace, but ended up being one of the most controversial documents in history. The treaty blamed Germany for the war and punished them severely. The terms were harsh, and many Germans felt humiliated and betrayed. Protests erupted, and the seeds of resentment were sown. They lost territory, had to pay massive reparations, and were forced to disarm their military. The economic burden was staggering, and the loss of territory was a blow to national pride. This humiliation and resentment would have major consequences down the line, setting the stage for another global conflict. The rise of extremist ideologies, including the Nazi Party, can be traced back to the discontent that brewed in the aftermath of the treaty. World War I was a tragedy on an unimaginable scale. Millions of lives were lost, and countless others were forever changed. The war left deep scars on the collective psyche of nations involved. It shattered empires, reshaped the political landscape, and left a lasting legacy of trauma and loss. The Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, German, and Russian empires all fell, leading to significant territorial changes and the creation of new nations. But it also taught us valuable lessons about the dangers of nationalism, the importance of diplomacy, and the devastating consequences of war. The League of Nations was established in an attempt to prevent such a catastrophe from happening again. So the next time you see a meme about World War I, remember that behind the humor lies a complex and tragic chapter in human history. It's a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring quest for peace. This is a video by the Millenium Studios.